Let's see here. All right, I think it's good. All right, man. How's it going? It's been a long time.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. How's life?
Well, can't complain considering everything. So yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, just kind of tell us who you are, what exactly, and what exactly you do.
Well, my name's Lance Brauman. I coach professional track and field athletes, mostly 100, 200, 400 meter runners. When you say professional track and field athletes, it's easier to explain it. The ones you see at the Olympic Games, they have professional circuits in the summer. So they do have a professional side to the sport, but the ones you see in winning medals are the types that I have.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that's funny you said that, because I think it seems professional track and field is kind of a niche sport. As popular as track and field is at the high school and college level, I'd say especially in the States, a lot of people don't know about the professional aspect. They kind of assume it pops up every 4 years at the Olympics. There's nothing happening in between.
Right. As first participated track and field is, especially in youth and high school and that sort of thing, it's generally considered a secondary sport. That's what you do when you're not playing football or when you're playing basketball or something like that. But, for the top end guys, there is a professional circuit. I mean, yeah, you're familiar with it, but there's a circuit in Europe and, a few meets in the US, but these guys are running in front of 60, 70, 80,000 people.
That's right.
For a 2-3 hour track meet. So it is a bigger deal in Europe, which is why we spend
most of your time there.
most of my summers in Europe. So.
All right. Awesome. And I guess, that's a good segue. So, I mean, what drew you to this sport? I mean, since it's such a niche thing, have you always loved track and field, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, well, my dad's a track coach. I mean, high school track coach, and, he started off in my hometown in Palaca, which is North Florida. And then he moved, he's been at Sanford Seminole for, 30 some odd years now, 40 years. Guess he's been there.
Wow.
35, somewhere in there. So it's crazy, 30 some years. But, I tell people all the time, if your dad's an auto mechanic, you learn how to work on a car when you're young. So my dad was a track coach. I was around it all the time. And if I wanted to spend time with him, that's where I had to do it at. So, I just kind of fun. And then I participated in it as well. I played a little bit of everything growing up. But in high school, you kind of have to, start narrowing in your focus a little bit. So I played football and ran track, and then was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to Auburn, ran track there, and then just went from there.
Right. Yeah. And what events did you run?
I was, my best event was the long jump.
Okay.
It's, a decent high school long jumper. It was top 5 in the country at the time, so not too bad, but good enough to get school paid for, and then once I figured out that that's what I wanted to do was coach, then I went and got my undergrad in kinesiology, my master's in XPhys, and then just kept going from there.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So you have the background, and you're a War Eagle. So that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I know, and for some of the people who may not know, but I know you've coached and still coach, some of the best sprinters in the world. I mean, some of the sprinters that come to mind in my mind are, Tyson Gay, Veronica Campbell-Brown, all these, medal winners, Noah Lyles, right now. So even if people don't know who he is now, they're going to know who he is.
If we ever get to have this Olympic Games, they should. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's right. It's coming. Yeah, it's coming. I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to circle to that in a second. But I mean, I guess, with all those big names, you've probably had so many different personalities and egos, along the way. It's hard to imagine that you kind of have a singular approach to leading and coaching these athletes. So, what are some common, mental personality characteristics you have seen, shared with some of those people who you've coached, who you believe, what you believe contributed to their success?
Right. Well, let me regress just for 1 second. And, I started off at a junior college in Kansas. So, and it was the type of place that they were all Division I talent, but either, for test scores or, might have had bad grades or something like that going through high school. That's where they had to go first before they could go into the Division I level. So all very talented. And it was a perfect, science project for me, as far as not only learning how to coach, but come up with a philosophy, and also how to start looking at different personalities and seeing how people click, and what kind of motivates one as compared to another, and that sort of thing. So it all started then, and then and just over time, just kind of, as much as you need to know the X's and O's of the sport. Great coaches also understand, in my opinion, the psychology of the athlete, as far as, like you said, what makes them tick, what's the button you need to push to get the best out of that person. And that can vary, but it's also pretty standard too. It just depends on what that area you're looking to get is. So
have you seen, because you're mentioning, that's interesting, you're mentioning kind of JUCO, levels, so kind of taking that stress out of, maybe what comes at a D1 or SEC school, or even a professional level. But did you see the same DNA, same struggles at that level, but then moving into a professional environment where these are all extremely successful, right, athletes at their level? So did that ego change? And now did you have to learn new things in that environment?
Sure. And each one of us a little different. The best thing about the junior college I was at is that, they were all great, but, you had 45 seats on the bus and 50 people sometimes that wanted to go meet. So, you found out real quick, the survival of the fittest, what the pecking order is, and you just had to deal with that and move on. And, from my side of things, I had to learn from a coaching side that not only did you have to understand each individual's, quirks, but you also needed to have your own, you need to have your own backbone, and you needed to be a guy that they could look at and say, okay, this is a guy I need to follow.
Awesome.
And that's the part of it that, being a leader in that situation is as important as any other aspect of it. They need to, when somebody's trying to find a direction, they need to trust the person that's leading them in the direction. So, being that guy that they can look to and, maybe not have all the answers, but they felt that you could help them find the answers.
That's interesting to point that out. So, there's really good evidence that, part of successful leadership includes eliciting or drawing the best, right, out of those people on your team or those people you work with. In your case, those people you coached with. So, just kind of, digging into what you just said, what have you done specifically to help elicit the best out of your athletes? And even to counter that, I'd be interested to know, what have you done that hasn't worked well, or maybe led to failure? So maybe you messed up early and then you applied some lessons learned later.
As far as successes, I'd say that and it leads into what the failures were as well, is that going to every situation, especially with these athletes, is having a plan and trusting your own plan and understand what that plan's going to be.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time that, you can find talented people and you can have the right talent, but unless they believe that you're leading them in the right direction, like I said before, they're not going to follow.
Yes, having their best interest in mind.
Yeah. And also have their best interest in mind. Also, they need to know that at the end of the day, you're both in it together. I'm only going to be successful as a coach based off of their success on the track. And so I have to give them everything I have in that area, or I don't consider myself to be successful. Now to get back to the other part of that question is that, the biggest learning experience was that, I had Tyson and Wallace Spearman. I had them at the University of Arkansas, and they were in the blocks getting ready for the 200. And they were ranked number 1 and 3 in the country. And there was a false start, and they both look up and see me over in the corner, and I look nervous and uptight, and they kind of tightened up because, coach doesn't get uptight. So, and all of a sudden they end up running, subpar, and we end up losing the meet by 2 points. So, my thing is that, my job's to have confidence in what I'm doing so that they draw confidence from that. Now, once I pat them on the back and send them into the tunnel of the major championship, I can go get nervous all I want to.
Because they don't see that. That's good. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's that's interesting. I wonder, that's probably a lot of what a lot of leaders are doing right now, right, in regards to they got to have tons of stress on their shoulders, right, as they're leading organizations. And
especially, I mean, you got people losing jobs. You got people.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah, and then how is it? How do you? Right. Yeah. How do you balance that? How do you convey transparency? Right. So in that situation, right, knowing that maybe Tyson and Wallace, they were in an extremely competitive environment, knowing that potentially they could lose, but then yet at the same time, how do you, engender confidence, right? So that's got to be a fine balance. No, so thanks for that. That's good. So I guess that's pretty good. Another good segue to that is, in the workplace, I know even in my own experience, there are tons of fears, anxieties, self-doubt that can get in the way of just performing well, performing to your potential. I know firsthand in track and field that you can't necessarily increase someone's innate capacity to perform. I was maxed out, at a certain point.
Right.
But a coach is definitely instrumental, in helping athletes overcome, the mental issues, that often get in the way of maximizing their potential, right, their performance. So I mean, that was one description, but are there any other examples where, you've seen, some effective ways you've implemented, given the high stress situations that these athletes are asked to perform in?
Yeah, and they all change based off the athlete. When Veronica won the Olympic gold medal in 2008, we got to the track and we got there about 2 hours beforehand, which we always do. And instead of, getting all nervous and walk around, we just went over there and, I sat down by her and we took a nap for about 30 minutes, just chilled out.
Awesome.
And then, got up, did her warm up. We generally do 3 block starts before a major run like that. And, Allison was there and everybody's, kind of in the same area warming up. And, she did her first block start and it was okay, but it wasn't great. And I said, all right, let's take the second one. And she gets in there and I mean, it was just average. And I said, you know what? Shit, you're ready. We're good. Let's go. And everybody's just like, started. And she just looked at me, okay. And we just walked in and went. So it just,
interesting. So you broke the status. Yeah, you broke that status quo, right? Based on that situation.
Change it up a little bit because it wasn't going to get any better on a third one. So whatever we have just go out there and run fast, So.
Oh no, that's really good. Yeah, that's really good.
I had Tori Bowie win the world championships a couple years ago at 17, and I'm not very boisterous. I'm not one that's going to sit back in the back and beat their chest. But after her last build up, I let out a big whoop and everybody stares around and looks and she turned around and said, oh yeah, we're ready. So it's just, just kind of breaking it up or finding the right button to push at the right time.
Yeah, that's really discerning of you. Yeah. I mean, you have to really know, you have to know your athletes well, and then you have to be kind of discerning, a lot of situational awareness, to be able to know that, so that's pretty neat. No, that's definitely a good example. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Sometimes you just got to go out on a limb and say, you know what, I'm going to say this. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but hell, he needs to know, I told Jason right before the world champs in 07, I was on the phone with him because I wasn't able to be at the meeting. I talked to him. I said, hey, man, next time we talk, you're going to be a world champion. Yes, sir. That's it. And he ended up winning. I was like, thank God, because I've never went out on
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Your prophetic powers would have ended right there. So
over at that point. But it just worked out. So sometimes you just gotta, throw it out there and see where it lands. But
right.
It's and judging the situation. I mean, not every situation it warrants, a change of behavior. Some do. So you gotta figure out when the right time to push that button is.
Right. Yeah. Understood. Well, good. And I guess, I want to ask you a little bit about resilience if I can. So peer-reviewed research kind of defines resilience as the tendency to cope with stress, right? In a highly adaptive manner. The evidence suggests that, people or individuals who display resilience or some people call it grit, as well, are able to, flourish. They're able to thrive and achieve, kind of their goals despite kind of the threats and the difficulties they experience. So I know a major aspect of your coaching is to build resilience, right? And the athletes that you train, they have to overcome, right, the suffering of losses, agonizing defeat, not peaking at the right time, injuries, right, pulled hammies, mental and physical setbacks. Yet they have to find a way, right, to press on to succeed in spite of all that.
Right.
So with the pandemic, a lot of people right now need resilience, right? Millions have, like we mentioned before, have been laid off. Their companies have been shut down. They're trying to pivot, but they don't have any freaking clue how. Life seems to suck around them, and there is evidence that if employees can build resilience in the face of job insecurity, which there's tons of that right now, it'll help employees kind of effectively deal with kind of the emotional exhaustion that comes from the anxiety of losing their jobs or the potentiality of losing their jobs. And the evidence seems to indicate that there are some people who are more either predisposed to resilience, like almost like that's their genetic makeup.
Right.
But
some actually thrive from it.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly. And there's some people who, where, there's evidence where it can be cultivated, within anyone as well. So I know for sure, you're a man, you're a dude who has tremendous perseverance, and I believe it's likely something you have learned to instill in your athletes. So how do you, so the question is, how do you build resilience in your athletes? And with that, do you believe it's even possible, or, to build it, or in your experience, is it something that some athletes kind of have and they're predisposed to? And that's essentially what's allowed those athletes to recover from difficulty, much more effectively.
Yeah, I think some have it, some don't. I mean, just like anything else, some are easier to convince that they're going to make it through, that they're going to be better, that they're going to be successful, and some, no matter what you do or tell them, it's just going to be a train wreck. They just can't get past the point of almost being afraid to succeed to a degree in this sport anyhow. Because as they show more promise, that amplifies their, then they feel like they have to win every single time they're on the track. Well, you don't. I mean, I'm just thinking of a couple of specific cases, but it's hard to work with those athletes, to be totally honest with you. And it's something that as I get better, which I'm striving to always be better at what I do as well. I'm hoping that it's helping the ones I do have in those areas. But kind of like you said, characteristic traits. I mean, that's of all the successful athletes that I've had, and this is kind of regressing again a little bit, is that they've all been more internally motivated, more so than externally motivated, meaning that they wanted to succeed for personal reasons more so than for the external, for the medal or for the money or for anything else. They just for whatever reason needed to be see And
all right, yeah. So very driven, yeah, very driven.
Around that, very driven. As far as what I'm doing now, in case of this, we got the Olympics, and we don't have tracks open, and there's no gyms open, and we're finding places and beat down soccer fields to go train right now. But my message to them is, this is what your job is. I mean, as long as we're able to find somewhere to do something, we need to do it. I'm not going to make you come, but I'm going to provide an environment to keep it as normal as possible for you. We're gonna try to stay in shape. Will we abbreviate some of the things that we do? Of course we do. We don't have a choice, because based off of the facilities and everything else, we're not going to get everything done. But my job in this case, as their coach or their leader, is to try, in my opinion, to give them as much normality as possible, to try to keep their everyday lives as structured as I can, based around what we normally do. The biggest thing, and right now, the biggest reason we're training is so that they're not just totally sitting by themselves.
Yeah. That's good, Lance.
We don't have.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you that. I mean, I think how much of their training, right? They were moving into this year. This is a huge year for them. So how much of that can be salvaged? in regards to the training they've done, or is it not necessarily salvage? Do you now have a mentality that says, man, 2021 is kind of where I need to be. So therefore now I'm just trying to maintain at this point, assuming the season's going to be canceled. So not only the Olympics, but probably the professional track circuit. And then, I mean, how are you, is it, you mentioned normality, right? You're trying to keep these guys, as normal as possible, but how does this go into 2021, a year that's usually a non-Olympic year?
I'm going to get up and move a little.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
I'm going to go so I can see a little bit better. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Right now, I mean, they haven't totally canceled the professional season.
Okay.
Is there a possibility that they may? Sure. But until then, we're going to, keep training as if we're going to have meets in August and September and possibly October. Whether they do or they don't, we can't control that at this point. So we're going to train like they're going to. And then if they do eventually cancel that part of the season out, then we'll just get ready for 2021. But, I mean, I'm doing my best, and what I'm telling the athletes that I work with is that, we get paid to do a job. We're going to go try to do the best job we can for as long as we can possibly do it. And then if they cancel out the rest of the season, then what we've done is just put in extra time doing things to be a better athlete or to, get stronger in areas. We're doing a lot more work on acceleration and through 30s, 50s, and 70s than what we normally do this time of year.
Right.
We're spending time doing other things that maybe we wouldn't have the time to do in the past.
Yeah. So your pivot is essentially changing the training plan, right, based on what's happened. It's interesting. And going back, because I know we were talking about resilience, we've talked about perseverance. I mean, are you seeing a lot of disparity with your athletes in regards to some people who are still saying, okay, I accept this new grind and I get this year's kind of a downer, right? Because they were hoping for qualifying for the Olympics, and some people and are taking that in stride, or you're seeing some people are like who aren't doing well, with it at all.
Well, for the most part, I'd say 90% of the group are doing just fine.
Oh, that's good.
I've had probably 10% fruition, meaning either they've moved on and done something else, or they just decided that they're done for the year. But 90% of the group, still knows that we got a job to do, and if we're not going to have a meet, then, we're just trying to be better athletes. But, the sad part is I had some guys, we were doing 220s in training coming through in 19.8. I had guys ready to run fast. So I had a female running 420, and, she's one of the best in the world, but ran 48.7 in training through 400.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for all those who are watching, those are really fast times. Yeah, for those people who don't understand the context.
They're pretty good. Yeah. So we were climbed up, and when they shut us down, we were 2.5 weeks from our first meet.
So you made it. Yeah, you progressed. So that's definitely a major pivot for you. Yeah, that's interesting. And again, it's funny, like, what I said at the very beginning about, again, a lot of people who kind of look at Project ReWork, they're mostly workplace professionals, but it's I think what we're trying to show is, essentially, I look at what you do as an organization, and it's a major pivot. I mean, you guys have essentially what you were striving towards has, essentially it's gone, the Olympics. And then now you can't just quit. Like, to your point, you said you're paid to do this job. So what, you as a coach and a leader, what do you do, right? And it's interesting, the devil's in the details, what you just described, and that's like what you're doing logistically. But, the other part is the psychological impact, being an athlete, knowing what I was striving towards is gone. How do I still stay motivated, especially going into the following year, which is now really what I want to work towards? It's almost like a repeat, right? It's Groundhog Day, repeat from last year, moving in, and that's got to be tough.
Yeah. And it is for most of them, but it's just not an easy situation, but we have it better than most. At least we have somewhere we can do a little something.
That's right. So, yeah, that's good.
But to give you some perspective, we're on a couple grass soccer pitches, no bathrooms, and lifting weights in the parking lot. So
it's crazy.
That's crazy. And I'm bringing them in 4 at a time. So we're starting at 7:30 and I'm done by 2:30. So.
Oh man. Oh, look at that. Practicing social distancing. That's great.
Exactly. Like I said, they're kind enough to let us use their field. So I'm keeping it to 10 or less, and we're keeping, it's almost 20 feet away.
Man, that is nuts. That is nuts. Some of the top sprinters in the world, you guys are lifting weights in a parking lot. I love it. This is great.
We are honestly, we've got some CrossFit bumper plates, the road ones, the big ones that look like tires.
Yeah.
A couple bars, and we're just dropping them and bouncing them in the parking lot. So.
That's great. That's great. I'll be driving by. You guys are doing power cleans. You know what?
Yeah, we're doing cleans and jerks and, bent over rows and all this stuff. We're doing it. We're just trying to have fun with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And, and then one day a week I got when all this happened, I went ahead and bought a power rack and I got it at my house. So I'll bring them over in groups of 2 throughout the day and we get a heavy squat in on a Friday. But, just trying to give them normality. Give them a reason to get up in the morning and get moving.
That's great. Yeah. And that's interesting. That's kind of a theme I've heard you say as far as trying to keep it as normal as possible for them, right? To kind of, lessen or mitigate, the impact, right, they feel from the pandemic. And lastly, I think, some people are going to want to know, you got any advice for all those people who can't go to the gym anymore, right? Their normal workout routines and fitness routines are gone. It's interesting what you've already described, but you got any advice for the average Joe on what they can do, right, to stay in shape, during quarantine?
Well, I've come to really love YouTube in the past few weeks. I've put new bumpers on my Jeep and rewired a radio, and I'm doing YouTube. So, I'd say as far as exercise and stuff go, just find some different things that you can do at home, body weight circuits, and some. You can always find somewhere that, even if it's around your yard or something, there's streets to go up and down, but just find something to where you're, they used to say when you're in college that, every hour you needed about 10 minutes to just get up and move around to keep the brain stimulated, instead of just going into kind of a, I don't know, paralyzed state is what I used to be in, but it was, but just finding an hour a day or finding 45 minutes a day to just go do something, jog, walk, ride your bike, take the family for a walk around the neighborhood, just something to just get moving. And then if you're actually, are actually homebound to where you can't, find somewhere to do sit-ups and push-ups and that sort of thing just around the house, but, designated time for it so that, like anything else, you can turn it into a routine because
that's right.
Once you start them, they're easier to keep. Yeah.
Keep a ritual for sure. Yeah. That's good. No, that's good. No, this was, Lance, this was great. And I really appreciate, you taking the time, for just to tell us a little bit about what's going on, how you guys are pivoting, in the world of track and field and the world of the Olympics. So I appreciate Lance Brauman, founder, CEO of Pure Athletics, Inc., world-renowned professional track and field coach, resilience expert. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, not a problem whatsoever. Tell Shar I said hello, please.
I will. All right, my man. Well, you take care. You too, man.
Between the two of us, we got a little hair going these days.
That's it. That's right. Well, yeah, man, you have a great night. We'll talk soon.